one Saturday when the two of them appeared on the patio. My wife, Kim, was standing with a man I had never seen before. He was a young African-American guy, probably around 21. They seemed a bit too close from what I could see. His arm was around her waist. I stopped mowing and walked over. He quickly moved his arm from around her as if expecting trouble. Kim and I had been married for 3 years. She was 23 now, and I was a year younger. We lived in the house that had belonged to my grandmother, which I inherited when she passed away 6 years ago. Kim and I moved in after our honeymoon and had been living there since. Kim was a beautiful woman, slim, with blonde hair and a short pixie cut and a friendly smile. But she wasn't smiling now. In fact, she looked like she was barely amused. I stopped about 10 feet away from them. "What's going on, Kim? Who's this guy you're with?" "This is Jamal. He's my boyfriend." She smirked. "Really?" I turned to Jamal, who was staring at me like he was ready for a fight. I won't lie. It was intimidating. He was bigger than me. I'm Brian Bixler. I'm 5'10", about 160 pounds, with short brown hair and brown eyes. I looked back at Kim. "Care to explain?" Before she could answer, Jamal spoke in a deep voice. "She already told you. I'm with her now." I turned back to Kim. "Is this why you're here? Are you ending things? Do you want a divorce?" "Not exactly," she said. "I'm just spending time with Jamal. I've been seeing him for about a month. Maybe you've noticed." "Well, whether you want one or not, that's where this is headed. I have noticed things have been off lately." "You don't want to leave me, Brian. Who else could you find as good as me? You just need to ride this out. I'm having the time of my life with Jamal. Both of you can leave now. Get out of here." Jamal stepped in. "No, you leave. We're staying. It's my house, not hers. I'll call the cops." Kim smiled. "You won't. I've got your phone." She waved it in front of me, sure that Jamal would stop me from getting it. I quickly snatched it from her and began to dial 911. Before I could finish, Jamal hit me hard, then again with his other hand. I stumbled, but didn't drop the phone. As I tried to focus on dialing, Jamal was on me again. I endured several hits to my body, including my sides and stomach. I fell to the ground, holding my stomach. Jamal reached down and grabbed my phone. He placed it on the patio and stomped on it. He stood over me and Kim came to stand beside him. She said, "It didn't have to be like this, Brian. You could have just gone along with it. You can't win against Jamal." I looked at her without saying anything. I felt too weak to speak. I lay back on the ground. Jamal got closer and stepped on my chest like he was showing off. Kim laughed a little. She remarked, "Jamal, ease up a bit. Let him have some pride. He's a loser. He can't keep his partner and he can't defend his home." Jamal looked down at me, grinning. "I fight better than you, and I'm better in other ways too. Do you get it?" I stayed quiet. He kicked me lightly. "Do you understand?" "Yes." "Say it again." "I understand." "That's still not good enough." "I understand, sir." "Good. Glad we got that clear." He then turned and walked into my house. Kim stood over me, smiling confidently. "Jamal has a nice place. We came to get some of my things. I'll be spending a lot of time there, but I'm not moving out. You can use the basement bedroom. He and I will take the master bedroom. Got it?" "No. Unless you want to hurt me, you should leave and not come back." "What? Jamal?" she called. "He doesn't want us here." Jamal came back outside. I still couldn't stand up. He said, "We'll leave when we get what she wants. But first, I'm going to be with your wife in your bed." He put his arm around her and they went inside. I tried to get up, but I couldn't manage it. I crawled toward the back gate leading to other homes. I was about halfway there when I heard Kim yelling inside, "Harder, Jamal!" I reached the gate and one of our neighbors, Bob Billings, saw me crawling. He hurried over. "What's wrong, Brian?" "What happened?" "No police," I said. "Can you take me to the emergency room?" "Sure, but you need to report this. You've been hurt." "No, please. No cops. I'll handle this myself. It's about Kim." He helped me get to his car, called for his wife, and drove me the 1.5 miles to the emergency room. He supported me as I walked in. A nurse saw us immediately and rushed over. "What happened?" she asked. "Just a fight. I lost." I handed Bob my wallet and he gave the nurse what she needed. He returned the wallet to me and they took me into the treatment area. A doctor approached me, asked where I was hurt, and I told him my stomach. He examined me gently. I winced and cried out when he touched a sore spot. A nurse came and gave me a shot. After that, I don't remember anything until I woke up later after dark. I was in a small area of the emergency room, treated and wrapped up. A new man walked in as I groaned. Mr. Bixler? You're awake. I'm Dr. Pitson. You've been hurt badly, but we've checked and your internal organs are okay. You might notice some changes in your urine for a few days. We won't keep you in the hospital, but you'll need to stay a bit longer. The police will arrive soon. Do I have a say in this? No, it's been reported to them. A couple of detectives entered a few minutes later. Detective Smith was a young black woman. Detective Harvey was a white man, possibly in his 40s. They took a statement from me and said they would follow up later. Smith informed me that my assailant was Jamal Bennett, a young boxer. She mentioned that I was fortunate to have come through this with less harm than I could have done. That evening, I was released from the hospital and took a cab home. The house was dark when I arrived. Inside, I saw that Kim had taken off some of her clothes. The bed was unmade, and the bedroom had an odd smell. I quickly called a locksmith to come immediately, even though it would cost extra. He arrived an hour later while I had showered and changed into comfortable clothes. I had all the locks changed. I went online to check my bank accounts. All my money was still there. I opened a new account at another bank in my name and transferred the maximum amount from the joint account. It wasn't all I needed, but I would sort that out later. I canceled all my credit cards except one for my work. Then I took some time to think about what had happened and how I would handle it. People see me as easygoing, and I often show that side to the world. But deep down, I have a lot of anger. I've often wondered if I was born this way or if my difficult childhood shaped me. My parents fought a lot, and my dad left one night and never returned. He later passed away in an accident, leaving life insurance that was set aside for me. After he left, my mom struggled a bit and had a lot of relationships. I was 12 when he left, and by 16 I had completed my GED. I started at a community college and after a year attended a larger university, studying finance and accounting with a minor in computer science. I finished my degree at 18. Before Kim, I didn't really date anyone. It wasn't that I didn't like girls. My family life and my mother's choices made me shy around them. My 18th birthday party was held in a bar's back room in early February. I had my first official drink there, just a beer. My friends Harry, Bob, and Jackson invited some classmates, one of whom was Kim. She was 19 and about to graduate. I recognized her from our finance and accounting classes. She was really pretty and friendly. I had liked her for a while, but I was too shy to make a move. The party was a good chance to talk to her. She arrived late, and when I saw her, I went up to say hello. "Wow, you do talk," she said, smiling. "I thought you only spoke in class." "I'm just shy," I admitted, smiling back at her. "No need to be shy," she replied, looking me over. "But it's cute. I think I'll take you home for your birthday." "Really? Are you joking?" "Not joking. You're with me tonight. Just follow me after we eat cake and sing." She laughed, but I could tell she meant it. Just then, the cake came out. Poppy seed. We cut it, and everyone sang happy birthday. Kim tapped my shoulder, waved for me to follow, and I did. She led me outside, stopped, and kissed me unexpectedly. It was a sweet surprise. After the kiss, she took my hand and led me across the grass to a building nearby. It was her apartment. She took me inside and led me into the bedroom where the lights were dim. She started to take off my shirt, and I removed my shoes. I could tell she was excited. She smiled and said she wanted to be close to me all night. After a moment, she suggested we relax and enjoy the evening. We sat close together, talking and laughing. It felt new and special. As the night went on, we shared more kisses. Everything felt warm and nice. We were comfortable together, and I could sense a deeper connection forming. In that cozy setting, we enjoyed each other's company, feeling a mix of excitement and joy. The evening turned into a memorable celebration for us both. This time she screamed in excitement. "Oh God! Oh!" I felt so happy after that. I knew I had made her feel good, and it felt wonderful. She sat up and asked, "Did you enjoy it?" "Oh yes, it was better than anything." "Was that your first time?" "Yes. Thank you so much." "You're welcome. I had a lot of fun too. You're very nice." She climbed off me and looked at me lying there. She was so beautiful at that moment. I knew I would always remember how she looked. We spent the rest of the night together, exploring what felt good for both of us. She showed me how to make her happy, guiding me gently. We learned and laughed together. Kim and I began dating more seriously after that. She soon moved in with me, and we both found jobs after graduation. I worked as a computer programmer for a local store, and Kim got a job with an accountant. Walter Lurker had his own firm with a few employees, including Kim Dot. After we started our jobs, we got married. We stayed in our apartment for a while before moving into my house when the renters left. I also received money from my dad's insurance when I turned 18. I hadn't seen my mom in a while, but she came to the wedding with a man she called her partner. Kim's parents lived nearby and helped us organize everything. They were kind people. Kim's mom was a math professor and her dad ran a remodeling business. Eileen and John Clark were a bit unsure about our young marriage, but they supported us and even gave us a trip to Jamaica for our honeymoon. We had a fantastic time there, Dot. About a year and a half into our marriage, I decided to start my own business, providing accounting and computer services to small and medium-sized companies. My first client was my previous employer, which helped me get started. Soon I attracted many small businesses as clients. A year after launching, I worked hard enough to hire 2 people. I admit I didn't spend as much time at home as I should have, but Kim and I still enjoyed our time together a few times a week, even if we didn't go out as often as before. However, about a month before things changed, our intimacy took a hit. It happened only a couple of times that month. When I asked her about it, she told me she felt neglected because I was focused on my business. She didn't want to go out dancing or to dinner when I suggested it. Instead, she started going out with her friends often. The Friday before everything happened, she called me at midnight to say she was staying with a friend because she had been drinking. She declined my offer to pick her up. I wasn't surprised to find her with another man. Just the week before, I had looked into divorce laws, and it appeared she had no claim on my house or the trust money. My business, well, who knew? As I sat there thinking things over with sore ribs, I looked up Jamal Bennett. He was a rising boxer in the light heavyweight division. He had been an amateur champion and was now a professional with support from a group of investors. He won his first 3 fights, all by knockout. No wonder he had the upper hand against me. Sunday went by without any major events. I took some ibuprofen and started feeling better. I went for a short run. I also called Kim's parents to update them on what had happened. Her dad said, "Brian, I can't believe what you're saying. Call her and ask. She's probably with her boyfriend unless he's in trouble." Marie then interrupted. "She's always been a bit unpredictable, Brian. She has episodes. We hadn't mentioned this to you because she hasn't had one since she was 14. This sounds like she might be struggling again. Marie, I really don't care. I need to move forward. I'm sorry she's going through this. I thought we were fine until the last month. We will definitely be calling her. Do you have a message?" "No, there's nothing to say." We ended the call. Then I had an idea. I called a security company and asked them to come out immediately. They arrived within an hour. We went over what I needed. I had them set up a system that would make a loud noise if anyone tried to break in. It would also alert the local police. They finished the installation just as it got dark on Sunday. This was a good thing because right after they left, I got a call from Kim. I chose not to answer but listened to her voicemail afterward. "You told my parents. I can't believe you. I'll make this right with you. This time you won't get away." I called the detectives and left a message. Smith called me back. I played the audio for her and she said it was a serious threat. She could get a warrant if I sent her the audio, which I did. Early Monday morning, around 2:00 a.m., I heard some noise at the door. I looked out the window and saw Kim and Jamal trying to get in with her key. "I changed the locks, Kim. Please leave now." "No way, we'll get in." But Jamal didn't look too sure about that. He pulled Kim away and they left in a car. I stayed close to my safety measures and nothing else happened. On Monday morning, I went to the office, gave some instructions, and met with a lawyer to sort out a few things. I spent 2 hours there and signed a power of attorney. After that, I visited the bank to close our joint account and withdrew all the savings. I took a cashier's check to deposit it into a new account. Then I stopped by a moving company and a storage facility. I returned to the office and spoke with my 2 employees about the changes ahead. We spent a good amount of time on Monday and Tuesday discussing all the accounts. I told my assistant, Jane Drummond, that she could bring someone new on board if needed. By Tuesday afternoon, the house was all cleared out. I packed my essentials in a backpack and in the saddlebags of my motorcycle. Later that evening, I put up a "for rent" sign in the yard. I stopped at a cell phone store to get a new phone with a new number. I turned off my old phone and put it in the backpack, taking out the battery. I reached out to my friend Jackson Deal, who lived in Mountain City, which was a 2-hour ride from where I was. He was ready for me when I arrived at 9:30 p.m. Jackson met me at the door. He worked in construction and lived in a refurbished barn outside of town. He had recently married, and he and his wife, Jenna, had a little girl named Dee Dee. The barn was spacious, and I was shown to a room in the back where I could store my things. Then, Jackson, Jenna, and I relaxed with some drinks while I shared my story. Jenna had been friends with Kim back in school and was surprised by her recent actions, calling them strange. Jackson chimed in, "Hold on, Brian. I saw something on ESPN a while ago." He pulled out his phone. "Here it is. Boxer arrested for assault." He read out a brief article stating that Jamal had been arrested for allegedly attacking me. The bond was set at $50,000. I replied, "That's fine, but no one knows where I am right now. I've been looking into the Paxton farm. I might head there." Jackson said, "I know those folks. They're about 4 miles up the mountain." Jenna added, "Don't they teach self-defense there?" "Yeah," I replied quietly. "I want to work on some skills." Jackson whistled and asked, "So what's your plan?" "I want to avoid being hurt again. I know I can handle myself, but I want an advantage." "You really plan on confronting him? That seems risky. He's a professional boxer." "I do want to see him eventually. Jack, you don't know all of me." "Okay then. I'll take you up there tomorrow. An older guy runs it along with his daughter. People come and go." "Sounds good. By the way, how have you been? Do you have baby photos?" They did. The next morning, I met Dee Dee, who was adorable. Then Jackson drove me up the mountain. Paxton Farmers. We got closer, we saw a few people jogging. The place had a circular drive and a big wooden building. In the back, I noticed cabins and another large structure made of metal. As we pulled in, we were greeted by a man who appeared to be around 60 and a younger woman, maybe my age. They were both dressed comfortably in sweats and sneakers, suggesting they knew we were coming. Jackson and I got out of the car and walked towards them. Jackson said, "Hello, Manny." "Hi, Jen. This is my college buddy, Brian Bixler. He's looking for some lessons in self-defense." I asked, "Could you help with that?" Manny replied, "We have 7 people here and there's room for one more, but we don't just accept anyone. Why don't you come inside and share your story?" "Sure," I said. He led us into a large building just as some runners arrived and went around to the back. The place wasn't fancy, but it was nicely furnished. The entrance opened into a big room with doorways leading to other areas. There was a balcony on 3 sides with rooms behind it. 2 wood stoves were on either end of the room. Both were lit. Manny asked us to sit down and encouraged me to tell my story. I spoke honestly. Jen, a woman there, asked, "Are you planning to fight this guy?" I hadn't thought of that, maybe. "I just want to be ready if I see him. Truthfully, I do plan to meet him." Manny asked me to stand up. When I did, he looked me over carefully. Then he quickly hit me on the face with his right hand. He tried to do it again with his left, but I blocked it. He stepped back. I didn't touch my face where he hit me. It was a hard slap, but I held his gaze. He smiled at me. "You can stay," he said. He looked at Jack and added, "Thanks for sending him our way." That was his way of saying Jack could leave. "Take care of Brian. If you need anything, just ask," Jack said. I nodded and we got my things from the truck. Jack then drove off down the mountain. Jen walked outside with us. "Follow me." She spoke in a no-nonsense way, but I sensed she wasn't too happy with me. She led me to a small cabin behind the main building. It had the number 6 on a post outside. Inside, it was cozy, with a bed, a bathroom, and a desk with a light. "While you're here, your name will just be 6. We keep identities private for our clients. But for us, numbers work." "Okay. I understand I'll keep my questions about others to myself," I replied. "Exactly. Your privacy will also be respected," she said with a smile. Jen seemed to be around my age and height, with a fit build. She had brown hair tied back and warm brown eyes. When she smiled, she was very pretty, and I aimed to make her smile more. "What happens now?" I asked. "You'll settle in and come to the main building for lunch. We'll have a plan for you then. My father will explain it." "All right. Can I look around? I expect lunch is a bit far off." "Lunch is at 12:30. You can explore as much as you'd like. I unpacked my things and noticed a set of comfortable clothes on the bed. I briefly wondered how they got there and if they would fit me. I set up my laptop and plugged it in. I found 2 internet connections. One was locked with a password. I turned on my phone and used the computer to check my old phone messages. I saw some from the police and Kim's parents. The police wanted me to meet with the prosecutor. Kim's parents were informing me that she had been arrested for threatening me over the phone. She might lose her job. That was unfortunate. I sent a text to my lawyer with my new number. Then, I checked on Jamal. He was still planning to fight in a week. I stepped outside and looked around, feeling curious about a metal building nearby. The first door I tried was unlocked, so I went inside. The bright interior caught my attention. 2 men were practicing their skills while Manny supervised. Both men were about the same size, around 6 to 2 inches and weighing between 190 and 200 pounds. One had blonde hair and the other was black. They were not part of the running group I had seen before. I watched their practice, which was quite impressive. They punched, kicked, used elbows, and raised their knees, all in a controlled manner. They wore protective gear. Some of their strikes landed, but most were blocked. At one moment, the black man knocked the blonde down. He quickly rolled away and got back up, returning the favor with a strong strike to his opponent's thigh. Manny blew a whistle, signaling them to stop. Manny clapped his hands in appreciation. "Very good, both of you, very good." The 2 fighters walked past me and nodded as they left the building. Manny approached and said, "You see, we train people here for combat. What you saw was just a sample, but done gently." "Maybe not so gentle," I replied. "We aim to keep people safe during practice. Now tell me how the boxer was able to land 2 hits on you. I was not holding back and you managed to block my second strike. That has only happened to me once before. Why do you think that is?" "I'm not sure. I guess I haven't thought about it much. He is a professional boxer, after all. I can assure you, his strikes were no faster than mine, and you should have been more ready for him than for me. So, I was a bit upset about the situation. That might have affected my reactions." "That's a fair answer. But upset? Just upset?" "Well, to be honest, I was really angry. There's no doubt about that. Let this be a lesson about anger and skill." With that, Manny walked away through the door. I explored the facility and noticed it was very well equipped. There were weights, exercise machines, and some tools I hadn't seen before. I even spotted several wood splitters. I picked up a 6-pound maul and looked out a nearby door to see a large pile of wood waiting to be split. I realized the place used firewood. I stepped outside with the maul. I had about 2 hours before lunch, and I had always liked splitting wood. It required attention to the wood grain and a mix of power and focus. I started working on a 20-inch round of what I guessed was oak. After practicing for a while, I remembered some skills from the past and kept at it. I was focused until I heard a horn sound. I checked my watch. It was lunchtime. When I turned to head to the main building, I noticed Manny and Jen watching me. I looked at the big pile of stacked wood around me. "I'll take care of it after lunch," I said as I jogged over to them. Manny replied, "No need. I'll have someone else handle that. I need to see you at the facility." He pointed toward a metal building. The 3 of us walked over to the facility and went inside the main lodge. I washed my hands and joined a group of men waiting for food. We didn't say much. There were 4 tables, and I sat with 2 men who had been training at the facility. Manny tapped his glass to get our attention. "Gentlemen, this is Six. He is new here and has a bit less experience than our usual trainees. Still, he wouldn't be here if he didn't have some special abilities, so let's give him a fair chance." He sat down and everyone turned to look at me. I waved and this made them chuckle. Then we went back to eating. The food was good but simple. At 1:15, everyone finished and got up to get back to work. I followed Manny to the facility. 2 men came with us, 2 and 4. 2 was short and stocky with black hair, and 4 was taller but also broad with dark hair. They spoke quietly as we walked. When we entered, the 2 men went to a big mat and put on some light gear. Manny took me to another area with a different mat. "I'll teach you some of the basics of our training. Just so you know, this will be intense and anything goes. The first rule is to focus on survival," he explained. "Okay, I understand. I replied, Manny, and I got suited up with bigger gloves and pads. He showed me some moves, starting with kicks and punches. He combined different movements, and I tried to mimic him. We practiced on heavy bags for an hour. While I was feeling the strain, Manny didn't seem tired at all. He noticed I was struggling and gave me a short break. "You did really well," he said. "You picked up the moves quickly. Now we'll move on to some new things. This will take patience, but you showed you have that today." We faced the bags again, and Manny demonstrated a jump move, hitting the bag with his elbow. It took me several tries to get it right. By the end of the afternoon, I was able to perform the move consistently. Manny marked spots on the bags with X's and told me to aim for those points with my elbow. It took me 4 tries, but after that I was hitting the mark each time. When we finished the exercise, Manny looked away for a moment. I caught a glimpse of him smiling to himself. This made me curious because what I did didn't seem all that hard. I noticed 2 and 4 had finished their exercises, which involved some sparring. They were watching Manny and me from a distance. 2 walked over. "He's not a beginner, Manny." He spoke with a slight accent. "He is, though." The 4 of us walked back toward the main building. It was 5:30 p.m., and we had been there for a few hours. As we got closer, 2 and 4 headed off to their cabins. Manny told me to take a shower and get into clean clothes for dinner. I was really thankful for the hot water. Dinner was good, too. We had meat and coleslaw with fresh rolls, but no dessert. We could choose water or milk to drink. I sat with 7 and 1, who were clearly American and knew each other well. We talked about the football season. Both were tall and strong, maybe around 6 and 3. 1 was leaner than 7, but still built. They were friendly, but we didn't share personal stories. We all agreed that the Ravens had a strong chance for the championship, but the Redskins didn't. Dinner wrapped up at 7. As I was walking back to my cabin, Jen approached me. "Are you good at chopping wood?" she asked. I used to do a lot of it when I was younger. It took me a moment to get back in the groove, but it's a soothing task, and I enjoy it. "Well, when you want to chop in your free time, go ahead. I watched you, and it was like a dance. I've never seen anyone chop quite like that." "Thanks, I appreciate it. What's the schedule like for my days?" "Up at 5 for a run, breakfast at 6, then individual activities until lunch at 7. I'll pick you up for that tomorrow. After lunch, there will be practice until around 4:30 or 5, then dinner and some time to relax." "Sounds good. I had a nice time with your dad today. What will you be teaching me?" "Oh, you'll find out soon enough. Brian, I think you believe everyone can do what you do physically. But you have talents that not everyone has. Did you ever play sports when you were growing up?" "Not really. My family life wasn't great. I sometimes played basketball at playgrounds or some ping pong at the Y. I did well at those, but I never saw myself as a great athlete. I'm just an average guy." "Well, you graduated college at 19, right? Jack mentioned that?" "I did. I got my GED early so I wouldn't have to stay at home." She looked at me and said, "Brian, you are not an ordinary person. You need to understand that. It's important to remember not to feel overly confident, but to be aware of your capabilities. Being realistic is very important." We arrived at my cabin and she turned to leave. I watched her closely as she walked away. After about 30 yards, she turned and looked right at me. That gaze lasted for almost a full minute before she continued on her way. I realized that I was feeling a mix of emotions. I wondered if she was thinking about me as well. I did what I could to settle down for the night. I woke up at 5 when a loudspeaker announced the start of the day. I put on some comfortable clothes and shoes and stepped outside. 4 guys were preparing to run. I decided to join them. There was a path up the mountain. 1 and 7 led the group, while 5 jogged behind me. We were all running at an easy pace. The trail then curved uphill. 1 and 7 kept up with me at first, but 5 soon fell behind. Wanting a good workout, I picked up my speed and passed them, making my way to the top of the hill. They followed a minute later, with 5 catching up soon after. 7 said, "You have some great stamina, 6. I replied, "I used to run a lot. That hill felt nice." We all jogged back down to the farm together. Jen was waiting outside my cabin and signaled for me to follow her. We approached a small space attached to the main building. I saw the other 7 heading there too, along with Manny. Inside the small room, there was a mat and some equipment. Jen began putting on pads and gloves. I hesitated, but eventually did the same. We're going to spar, Six. I know you might hold back, but if you do, I won't make it easy for you. Are we going to end up hurt? I asked. Nah, you'll get the hang of it after a few rounds. Just remember the moves you've practiced. She got into a fighting stance and said, "Go ahead and hit me." I tried the punching technique Manny had taught me the day before. Before I realized it, I was on the floor. Somehow she had used my own arm to bring me down. I looked up and saw a small smile on her face. That's a lesson. If you pull your punches, you'll end up down here. I almost said something cheeky, but I held back. I got back on my feet and she relaxed her stance. I faked a punch and went for a kick. She dodged and landed a hit on my stomach. I stepped back. She moved forward slowly and the space was tight. I attempted a double punch, right and then left. I connected with my left on her shoulder, but right after that she kicked my head, knocking me down again. I rolled away but found myself against the wall. She stood over me, waiting. I stayed crouched against the wall, my head throbbing, but my feet held firm for leverage. Suddenly, she stepped aside and kicked me in the chest. I sprang up and pushed her as I got to my feet. To my surprise, she stumbled backward, and I moved in, ready to follow up. I'm not exactly sure how it happened, but I found myself lying on my back with her foot on my chest. "So," she said with a smile, "you can see I don't need you to go easy on me. Maybe the other way around, at least for now." She reached out and helped me up. My stomach ached, and I felt embarrassed as I stood. She kept smiling. "You did well, Six. You even made me stumble. Of course, I could have stopped you any time." "I know," I replied. "It's humbling. If you were a guy, I'd probably have lost my temper." "Then you would have done worse. Staying calm under pressure is a real skill, and you seem to have it. You've lost to a girl, yet you're still handling it pretty well." I guess," she grinned. "We'll keep practicing, and my father's lessons will continue too. Maybe you'll fight some of the others soon." We practiced again, but the outcome was the same. By the end, at least I could stay on my feet while attacking. That afternoon, Manny taught me 2 new techniques, small changes to what I'd learned before. I also watched 1 and 7 spar, with Jen acting as the referee and coach Dot. The rest of the week followed a similar pattern. Every morning, Jen would beat me in our practice sessions, and every afternoon, Manny would teach me new variations. I started to improve, little by little. I focused on what I was good at, my quick reflexes and strong hand-eye coordination. My upper body was fast, and I had decent strength. The next time I faced Jen, I avoided her kicks and used my fists and elbows instead. By the end, we went much longer before she finally knocked me down. She offered me her hand, helping me up again. "You'll win soon. I can see you're thinking more about it," she said. "A bit," I replied, looking at her closely. She was attractive, and I couldn't help but wonder about her life outside of training. "Can you come by my place after dinner? I'd like to chat. No fighting." "I'll come at 8, I said. "We can sit on the porch." She smiled, and we parted ways. Dot. At exactly 8 o'clock, she appeared from around the main house. She was still in her sweats, as was I, though hers were a bright teal instead of gray. I couldn't help but notice. "I like the teal," I said. "Oh, thanks. It's my version of evening wear." She laughed and sat in a rocking chair while I took a seat on a stool opposite her. "I'm a straightforward person, Jen. I'm attracted to you. It's not just because of your skills, either. I've been curious about your life, both here and before." She paused before answering. "I've been training with my father since I was 3. He and my mom started this school. My mom got sick with cancer and passed away 4 months later when I was 12. My dad never remarried. I finished high school and spent 2 years in the Army. I instructed martial arts there after basic training. When I left the Army, I came back here to help my dad with the school. Business was growing and he needed me. I've been here ever since. If you're curious, I'm 24. How old are you? I only know what led to your divorce, if it's really over." I shared with her my sad family story and how I met and married Kim. She asked, "Aren't you curious about what happened?" She was a loving wife, then suddenly changed. I have thought about it. Her family mentioned that she had episodes, but they hadn't happened since she was 14. Maybe I should have asked more, but I thought she was just drawn to the boxer. He is pretty charming. That doesn't explain why she treated you so poorly, Brian. She could have talked to you kindly and moved on. Instead, she embarrassed you deeply. If I were you, I'd wonder about that. You're right. That's very insightful. I'm sure you would have figured it out, but you were too close to the situation. I could see it from a different angle, so it became clear. But I still don't understand what happened in the house. Yes, that remains a puzzle. She smiled at me. Have you been alone since all this? Oh, yes. Well, I see. She waved her hand playfully and laughed. What about you? Do you find comfort from your clients? Yes. Okay. And now? 1 in 7 have been helping me since they arrived. Both at the same time? She laughed again. Sometimes the 3 of us spend time together, but they're leaving at the end of this week, just 2 days from now. I'm sure we'll see each other tomorrow night. After that, I might need something different. I stood up and offered my hand to her. She took it and I walked her into the cabin. She turned to me and we shared a quick kiss. She stepped back. You can think of this as a trial run, no pressure. But just so you know, a poor performance could have some consequences. She laughed lightheartedly at her joke, and I wondered how tough she truly was. I was hoping for her cooperation. I understood what she was implying. In moments, we were close together on the bed. It felt exhilarating. She was almost as strong as I was, and I let her take charge. She settled in close to me, and I was impressed by her confidence. She enjoyed herself a lot, and so did I. After a while, we both relaxed, breathing heavily. You are quite impressive. This trial is going really well for you. Oh, thanks. I'm relieved to avoid any trouble for now. For now. We started around 9 p.m., and for the next several hours, we shared a wonderful time together. I had never experienced anything like it before. Kim was lovely, but Jen was even more engaging. After 2 in the morning, she quietly slipped out of bed, and I finally got some rest. The bell rang at 5. I got up and went for a morning run. I didn't feel as lively as the day before. I think the others noticed, but no one said anything. A few shared smiles when I lagged behind a bit. During my practice fights with Jen, I stepped back more often. I kept looking up at her repeatedly. After about an hour of this, she helped me stand and said, I can see you're a bit tired and not focused. Everyone has days like this. Can you get past it? I turned away and stared at the wall for a couple of minutes, trying to clear my mind. When I turned back, we took our fighting positions, and I surprised her with a quick move that knocked her down. I helped her back up. She looked at me with a surprised expression, but took her stance again. This time, she struck first. I dodged her punch and her next kick. I used her momentum to pull her down again and helped her get up. I said, maybe you were right about my focus. We took our positions again. We fought for several minutes before she knocked me back down with a kick. She smiled down at me. That was a great fight. When you're focused, you can match me. You've really improved. She helped me up, and we ended our session. When we stepped outside, there was a group gathered around the door, likely returning from another area. Jen walked past them, and I followed. I figured they were just curious. I turned back to ask one why they were there. Last time Jen spent the night with someone she fought, that person got hurt. We were just curious. You're okay, though. By the way, we thought she might come tonight for our last session. Will she? I'm sure she will. Just don't know who she'll be with. That's her choice. Jen and I had dinner together. She was quiet for a while, then looked at me. It's their last night. And there are 2 of them, and just one of you. I respect her choice, whatever it is. We have time. This made her smile. She stood up and walked away. I didn't see her until our morning practice. I won most of our fights in the first hour. Finally, I said, maybe you're a little distracted. She looked at me and laughed. Then she took her stance and knocked me down quickly. Looks like you were right, she said as she helped me up. This is our last practice in this small room. You've done well enough to move to the mats for fights now. I have to say, I've enjoyed sparring with you. It felt strange to hear her say that, but I had enjoyed it too, fighting alongside her. I just nodded in agreement. That afternoon, Manny showed me some footwork that helped set up punches. Then he asked me to practice on the mat with 7 in his final session. I looked at Manny for a moment but couldn't read his expression. He remained calm. 7, and I got ready to spar. I felt a bit annoyed at him, and won too, but I faced the wall and cleared my mind. Then we began our match. The new footwork was still being refined, and for a while Seven had the upper hand, but I stayed calm and kept practicing. Suddenly it all clicked, and Seven stumbled to the ground. I helped him back up. "Your new move is tough to defend against, Six, when you do it right," Seven said. We practiced more, and he got creative with his defense. However, my new footwork gave me an advantage when I applied it well. It started with a quick step, which could lead to either a straightforward punch or, if he backed away, a round kick or punch. I hadn't heard Manny mention the round punch, but it worked well. After we finished, Manny and I exchanged nods with Seven. On the walk back to our cabins, Seven mentioned, "She wasn't quite herself last night. She had fun, but there was a change. I think it's because of you." "I've only been with her once. I shouldn't feel jealous." "But you did. I could see it. Manny noticed too. He set up our practice to test you, and you succeeded." Later that evening, I saw Seven, One, Jen, and me sharing a dinner table. Jen seemed a bit shy as they sat down. One said, "Jen, it's been wonderful to know you here. I'll always remember you, even if my time might be short." He smiled. We talked about various things during dinner. When we finished, Jen hugged each of them before they left. After that, I didn't see them again, but I spent a lot of time with Jen. I spent the next 3 months at the farm, learning about fighting. I practiced sparring with everyone, including Manny in the end. Jen and I spent each night together. She didn't form any new relationships, and the longest anyone stayed, apart from me, was a month. After a week of sparring with Manny, he called me to his office after dinner. "Have you thought about how to deal with the boxer?" he asked. "Not exactly. I thought I'd revisit and see how it goes." "Brian, I believe you could handle him on the street, but that might land you in trouble given your past. I've noticed how close you and Jen have become, and we'd like to avoid any problems. So, I have a suggestion." "What is it?" "You should box him." "And how can we make that happen?" He shared his plan with me. The following week, I got up early, ran, and then drove to a gym in Mountain City right by the train tracks. It was a boxing gym owned by Jenks Martin, a former boxer. Jenks had been a near champion in his weight class and was well known as a trainer, with local fighters and 2 who competed at a national level, including Jerry Tatum. I met Jenks in his office. Manny had talked to him about me, and Jenks had a training plan ready. I got geared up and started by hitting a light bag, then worked on a heavy bag, followed by skipping rope. At the end of the day, I faced off against a tough local fighter. Jenks advised me not to strike too hard and to stay out of his range. I followed his advice, even though I was weary from my training. Jen was curious and asked about the fight, so I shared the details. After 2 weeks, Jenks arranged a match for me against a lighter heavyweight. It was a professional fight, but more of a club event. I registered under the name BB Farmer. Jenks told me to land many punches but avoid knocking him out if possible. It was set for 3 rounds. I managed to hit my opponent, Larry Bonds, quite a bit, although he only managed to hit my arms. I won the fight by unanimous decision. Each day I trained with Jenks, spent time with Jen, and lifted weights. I also did a lot of wood chopping to stay strong. Eventually, I sparred with Rashard Jones, a professional fighter under Jenks's guidance. He quickly brought me back to reality with his stronger hits. I hit him too, but his punches carried more weight. For a while, I struggled. I started to learn from him, practicing on how to throw quick combinations. I worked hard on the heavy bag. After 2 months, I felt like I could go toe-to-toe with him. During that time, I had 10 local bouts and 2 more out of state, winning all of them, 9 by decision. One fighter annoyed me during a match out of state, and I ended up knocking him out in the 2nd round. He liked to show off and thought he could get under my skin. That backfired on him. Now, I was an undefeated professional. Jenks asked me if I felt ready for my next challenge. "For what?" I replied. "Jamal Bennett. He's fighting a series of matches against underdogs. You would be up against him next month." "All right, but what's your take on it?" "I accepted the fight. You'll earn $4,000 plus expenses." "Sounds good. I'm excited for it." For the 6 weeks leading up to the fight, I studied recordings and trained with some fighters that Jenks brought in. Watching the tapes stirred a lot of emotions in me. I had to be careful during sparring sessions, with Jenks reminding me to keep my cool. We headed to D.C. for the fight, with Jenks, Manny, Jen, and me. Bennett was well known in D.C. and a ranked light heavyweight. The four of us stayed at a nice motel. The fight was scheduled for a Friday in a large arena that could seat 5,000 people. It was almost full, especially since our match was the main event, advertised as a clash of unbeaten fighters. Up. Until this point, I hadn't heard much about Jamal Bennett or my ex-wife. There hadn't been any news coverage, and no one from my past knew where I was. Bennett and his team didn't seem to take me seriously, but they were expecting to make money from the fight since it would be broadcast on television. As I was getting ready, Manny pulled me aside. "Your ex-wife is here. She seems to have a child with her. They'll be at ringside. Does she know I'm the one fighting?" "I'm not sure. Someone from Bennett's team might have recognized you, or maybe he did. He must have seen the video." "You know, I only saw him once, and not for long. I guess I'll find out when we meet at the center." I stepped into the ring and people started to boo. Bennett was a big favorite in this town. I kept my hooded robe on while I waited in my corner. Jenks was my corner man. Manny and Jen were at ringside. Bennett entered the ring to a lot of cheers. I watched him closely from under my hood. He loved to show off. Seeing him made me feel angry. I turned away from him and focused on the empty space in front of me, feeling calm take over. We were called to the center of the ring for the pre-fight meeting. I kept my hood on. It was clear that Bennett didn't know who I was. He was jumping around, shouting. I spotted Kim at ringside. She had a child with her. I took off my hooded robe and smiled at her as the bell rang. I saw surprise on her face as I turned back. Bennett bounced around, throwing jabs that were nowhere near me, but it looked good. He liked to move back and forth in front of his opponent. He had a rhythm, but that was a weakness because I could predict it. In the first minute, we both started to find our rhythm. His jabs and one strong punch all missed. When he dodged to his right, I landed two strong jabs and a quick punch. The punch hit him solidly on the cheek. He stumbled. Anger flared up inside me. I pushed him into the ropes and hit him in the body with several punches. I felt him weaken. I stepped back and landed a punch to his jaw, sending him back against the ropes. I knew he was done, but as he fell toward me, his head was right there. I could have hit him hard again. I felt a surge of rage, stronger than ever. But I held back. He fell onto the canvas, out cold. I stood there for a moment, looked down at Kim, who was watching in shock. I flexed my muscles and mouthed a word. Then I turned and walked to my corner, stepping through the ropes and out of the ring. The four of us went straight to the dressing room. I didn't take a shower. Manny had a van outside with our things. We got in and drove away. No press, no TV. Manny drove us back to the farm. It took about 2 hours and we felt ecstatic once we were clear of the arena. There was beer for Jenks and me. About 30 minutes from the farm, Manny asked me, "Why didn't you hit him again at the end, Brian? I could see you were really angry when you had him on the ropes." "I'm not sure, Manny. It was right there. He was vulnerable. I didn't want to hurt him badly. I need to think about it." Jen said, "That's a good thing, Brian. Anyway, he's definitely hurt, but not too seriously. It was an easy shot. I could have done it, but I have mixed feelings." "Well," she said, "they're going to offer you money to fight again. Do you want to do it?" "I don't know. I have enough money. The business is doing well, and I could make a good profit from selling it. But I really enjoy fighting. You could be a champion one day, but things have changed since the days of Ali and Frazier. I'll think about it. I like the MMA stuff." She laughed. "I can see that. You're pretty tough." "Seems I'm not as tough as I thought." We got to the farm and unloaded our things. Jenks was staying overnight. Everyone was in the main house, and Jen and I were going upstairs when Jenks turned on ESPN. There it was, the short fight clip. It showed me knocking out Bennett and then cutting off. We all laughed, thinking about why we had to leave, mainly because of how Bennett's friends might have reacted. I felt really tired, but watching that quick fight was captivating. It was like I was there again, yet I couldn't really believe it was me I was watching. They played the knockout in slow motion. As I watched, I felt both present and distant, almost floating. I had to sit down. At one point, when I could have seriously hurt him, I focused on my own face. I saw my expression shift. For just a moment, I felt anger. Then it faded to nothing, like I was lost in thought. It was strange. I couldn't recall ever feeling that way before, but I could see it on the video. Then I watched as I flexed, looking at Kim. My face was blank, as if I had planned every step. I remembered leaving the ring, but not that moment of flexing. Everything felt hazy, but it began to clear up as I walked toward the dressing room. Skipping a bit down the path, Jen was holding my hand tightly. I noticed I was gripping her hand back. We exchanged glances, both unsure of what I had just seen. I stood up and pulled her with me. "It's time for bed," I whispered, wanting her close. Manny and Jenks remained quiet. By then, Jen and I were deeply in love. We felt it and had said it openly. It was stronger than anything I had ever felt for Kim. We changed into our pajamas, keeping everything casual. I slipped into light pajamas and she wore a nightdress. We cuddled together. "What did you feel when you watched that?" she asked. I felt like I was distant from myself, the fighter. I knew I was that person, but it felt strange. "I've been thinking about everything you've been through. I believe you need to understand what happened with Kim, why she did what she did. You mentioned her family told you she had some earlier struggles that they never talked about. I don't want to see her. She has a child now. She hurt me deeply, and it felt sudden, like I never mattered to her. The divorce papers came so fast. But Brian, she was your wife for a long time. There were no signs until nearly the end, right before she showed up with that boxer. How can that be? I think you'll always have doubts about us too, if you don't find some closure. Maybe you should talk to her family." "I'll think about that. I can't just visit them. For all I know, Kim could be living there. Let's look into it tomorrow, okay?" "Yep, sounds good." The next day, Jen and I checked on a few things. First, we looked into Bennett. He was still in the hospital, not in danger anymore, but he might not be able to do much for a while. Next, we found out about Kim. It seemed she and Bennett were living together in a condo in Virginia. There was a mention of a child, but no other details. A news story about Bennett showed him celebrating after a match. They mentioned that his future in boxing was now unclear. I decided to call Kim's parents. They lived in a suburb of D.C., John worked at the Pentagon, and Eileen was a high school math teacher. Eileen answered the phone when I called around lunchtime. "Hi, Eileen. It's Brian." "Oh, Brian, why are you calling now? This isn't the best time." "Eileen, I'm sorry about Bennett's injury, but I want to talk about something else. I'm confused about what happened between Kim and me. I feel like I need some answers, but I don't want to see her." "I understand. We did mention that Kim had some issues as a teenager. We thought they were behind her, but it seems they're not. Let me see if John will talk about this. I'll call you back at this number." "Yes, thank you." Kim and I went on with our days. She kept her phone close, waiting for a call. Reporters came to the farm, which we should have expected. They weren't allowed on the property, but some customers felt uneasy. Manny was worried, too. I called a friend who knew about public relations. He told me that reporters would keep pushing for more information. They loved a good story, especially a mysterious one, but they wanted answers. I sent Jenks out to the gate. I had arranged a meeting with the press in a separate room at his gym. He announced it for 5 p.m. Kim's parents called back shortly after. I set up a dinner with them at a hotel in D.C. for 2 days later. I thanked them for agreeing to that Jen, Jenks, and I talked about how to manage the press conference. Jenks and I arrived just after 5. Cameras were everywhere. Flashing lights filled the room. I had a statement ready. I expressed my hope that Bennett was doing okay. I mentioned that I didn't have plans for a next fight at that moment. Finally, I expressed my gratitude for the chance to fight someone like him. Then came the questions. How did I feel after the fight? Numb. Did I think I could win? Yes. Did I believe I could beat the champion? I hadn't seen him fight. Why was I celebrating? I was just happy. Did I say anything inappropriate? I don't remember. Was I talking to Bennett's partner? No, that was a lie. Would I fight Bennett again? Not sure. I don't know if he wants a rematch. At that point, Jenks stepped in and wrapped up the press conference. We quickly left for the main gym. When I arrived at the gym, we went in through the side door. Inside the main area, a group of guys were working out. They clapped for me, though the sound was a bit muffled because they were wearing gloves. I heard some cheers, too. I smiled and took a small bow. I felt a bit overwhelmed at that moment. Later, when I considered whether to keep going, I thought about those guys. I got a ride back to the farm with Jenks' driver. Jen had watched me and said I looked silly. I told her that was the look I was going for. After all, I was a club fighter trying to keep a low profile. Jen and I practiced on the mat. It was a good match, but I only just managed to win. She was tougher than I expected and really pushed me. We had a nice dinner in the main room and the guys there clapped for us. I waved back at them. After that, Jen and I went upstairs to relax and watch an old movie. Then we went to sleep. I got in another workout afterwards. I was feeling nervous about having dinner with Kim's parents. I asked Jen to come with me, and we had a reservation for 7. We were staying overnight. John and Eileen arrived right on time. I shook John's hand and hugged Eileen. I introduced Jen as my partner, and Eileen seemed a bit disappointed. We ordered drinks, and I said, I still don't know what happened with my marriage. I was too sad to ask before, but Jen thinks I need to face this, and I agree. Can you help me understand? Eileen replied, Brian, Kim loved you. I believe she still does, but she has acted out in the past. When she was 13, she had a breakdown and spent some time in the hospital. After that, she went back to school. About a year later, she hurt a boy in her class and had to go back to the hospital. She started treatment and got better since then. There have been no issues since. John added, until she had that incident with you. I see that as a sign of trouble. She seemed quiet leading up to that day, maybe a month prior. I think she was involved with Bennett. She introduced him to us 2 weeks before it happened. John and I were very surprised and worried. She said she wanted to talk to you about it soon. At that time, she didn't seem unstable. Did you consider telling me? She planned to, so no, we couldn't know how things would unfold. What's their situation now? I heard she's living with him. Yes, she and little Johnny are with him. He's not a bad guy, Brian. I can't speak for that incident, but from what we see, he seems all right. Eileen appeared to be honest. Well, I can't say I wish them the best. How old is little Johnny? There was a brief silence. John replied, He's 11 months old. Oh, so she might have been pregnant when she introduced him. Is it common for pregnant women to experience these challenges? Again, there was a pause. Eileen shook her head. We really don't know. After the incident, she didn't seem to lose control, Brian, just that one scene. But it was a terrible scene. Jen had listened closely. She's smarter than I am, she asked. Do you have pictures of Johnny? Oh, well, no, not here. Not on your phones? Jen's voice was sharp. I began to understand. I said, Eileen, is there something I need to know about John? Silence. Jen said, He's your son, Brian, not Bennett's. They seem to not want you to know that. She turned to them. Why not? Kim says it's actually Jamal's child. He'll be the one to raise him. She asked us to keep it quiet. Brian, he looks just like you. I said, I need to think about this. I can't just walk away. I can't believe she would do this after everything that happened, maybe. But this is really messed up. John said, Brian, I understand how you feel. But what good would it do to meddle? Well, I want to know my son, and after what they did, I think I might be able to get some kind of custody. Just then, the waiter came and asked if we were ready to order. I hesitated, but then decided to go ahead. I was hungry. We all ordered. The act of ordering seemed to ease the tension at the table. Jen asked me, What do you know about the divorce? What did she say about the pregnancy? I looked at John and then at Eileen. She said, Kim's lawyer sent you the papers. There wasn't any mention of a child. There wasn't a child then. When he was born, Jamal's name was on the birth certificate. The divorce was final by then. We all thought it was his child, not yours. She had seen him many times that month, but not so much with you. True, I guess that's true. Maybe twice with me. What's Jamal's relationship like with the child? He must know he's not the dad by now. Well, he realized soon after the birth. He left for a week. Then he came back and has been around since. He doesn't change diapers. We haven't spent too much time with them to say more. Okay, that doesn't tell me much. What's the news on his health after the fight? He's hurt. He's having trouble speaking clearly. The doctors believe it will clear up with some rest. You hurt him badly, Brian. How does that make you feel? I feel good about winning. I could have really hurt him, you know. Did you watch the fight? John said. I did. I saw it live and I watched the video. I know you could have done far worse when he came off the ropes, but you didn't. And I still don't know why. I hated him. But he got some of what he deserved. There's some doubt about whether he will get any money after this. His supporters are worried about his health, but the contract says he's insured against injury. So maybe. Jen said, "Have you talked to Kim since the fight?" "No, just on the phone. We have Johnny with us, Brian, at our house with a sitter." Then the food arrived. It was a nice restaurant, but I barely touched my meal. Jen finished her food, then ate most of mine. I wasn't hungry anymore. We were quiet for a while, then I said, "I want to see the pictures now." Eileen took out her phone. She had many photos and some videos. As we enjoyed dessert, I looked at them. We ordered coffee and I continued to browse. Jen was peering at the pictures after she finished her pie. "He's a cutie," she said. "He really is. Eileen, we can't keep this as it is. He cares for his mom and dad, Brian. You saw it in the video." "I did see it. We're spending the night here. I want to meet Johnny tomorrow. What can we set up?" John replied, "Kim doesn't know you're here. I feel guilty about not telling her. I'll let you handle that, but I have choices, including a DNA test. Just by looking at him, I have no doubts. I could go to court if needed. They seem to have made an error on the birth certificate. If possible, I want to avoid lawyers." "All right. Why don't you come over for lunch tomorrow? Johnny will be there." So that's what we did. In our room later, Jen and I ordered wine since they didn't drink. She asked, "What do we do next?" "I'll need to talk to someone who knows Virginia law. I know a lawyer, Harry Bacon, who can help. I'll call him in the morning." "How are you feeling about all of this, Jen?" "You know, I should feel worried, but I don't. I trust your love. Everything else is just details. I love you, Jen. You're amazing." "Oh? And what about your baby's mother?" I chuckled. "I cared for her, but it was never like it is with you." The next day, we arrived at John and Eileen's home for lunch. They welcomed us inside and led us to the living room where young Johnny was on the floor playing with wooden blocks. He looked up as we entered. Eileen said, "Johnny, this is Brian and Jen. They came to see you and have lunch." Johnny glanced at us, then went back to his blocks. I crouched down, picked up a block, and stacked it on his pile. I kept adding blocks until they formed a tall tower. Johnny studied it carefully, then knocked it down with a swipe. He giggled as I exclaimed, "Oh no!" I started to stack the blocks again. He waited until they were tall, then knocked them over again with laughter. We played for a while, and then we found an accordion nearby. Buttons, making sounds. And so did he. He took careful steps. I held out my hand and he took it. We walked to the dining room where Eileen lifted him into a high chair. He had bread and peanut butter with celery while the adults enjoyed quiche. Eileen's phone rang and she stepped into the kitchen. When she returned, she said, "That was Kim. Jamal is being moved to rehab after he settles in." I felt like she would arrive in about 30 minutes. They were already at the place. I glanced at Jen. She said, "No need to delay. We all know that Brian..." agreed and added, "But be ready for some tension." Eileen noticed that Johnny had finished his lunch, so she took him for a nap. The three of us talked about what would happen next. John would meet Kim at the... Just then, Kim without Johnny. Jen and I watched as Kim got out of the car. She looked tired, but okay. Her dad greeted her as she entered the yard. We watched them talk. Kim shook her head and seemed upset. Then Eileen stepped outside to join them. After a few moments, the three of them came inside with Kim between her parents. I said, "Hi, Kim. This is Jen." She looked at me with, "You really hurt him." "I know I did, but believe me, I didn't hurt him as much as I could have. And you're one to talk. Things have a way of coming back around, right?" She looked down, quiet for about 20 seconds, then raised her head, tears filling her eyes. "I guess it's my fault. I was wrong, and I can't explain it all. We met on the dance floor and I got caught up. I knew I was making a mistake. But why let him hurt me? Why humiliate me? Brian, I was scared you might hurt him. I know what... I see now that was a mistake. It was the worst day of my life. But I looked at Jen and thought about how things turned out well for me. I'm happy now, but I don't think I can fully forgive you. I don't want you in his life, Brian. Jamal is his dad, and he has always been there for him. Only because you never told me. It should have been clear. I'll do whatever it takes to be in Johnny's life, Kim. She turned away, knowing she had to give in, also worried about Jamal. She said, Jamal is really hurt. He has a bad concussion and maybe more. The tests say he might get better over time. How did you get so good at boxing, Brian? He is one of the best in the country. I had motivation and some good training. I looked at Jen. And he thought I was just another weak opponent. He wasn't ready. Eileen said, let's all go to the living room and sit down. Kim, can I get you something? Maybe some water, thanks. She was looking at me and Jen. None of us knew Jamal would be fighting you, Brian. I was shocked when I saw it was you. I wanted to stop the match, but it ended too quickly. You called me a bad name. Yeah, if it fits, then it fits. Revenge. It's all about revenge. What now? I'm not sure. My plans have changed. Jen and I will figure it out. Maybe it's mostly her decision. It's all new territory for me, and for Johnny, too. After talking some more, Kim went upstairs to get some rest. She really needed it. Jen and I returned to our hotel to pack our things. We then headed to a motel close to the Clark's house. Jen called Manny to let him know we'd be back in 2 days. She also told him about Johnny. Once she hung up, she said, Manny can't wait to see Johnny. He's not as serious as he pretends. The next morning, I spoke with a lawyer about child custody in the state. I returned to the Clark's house with some information. I hoped we could come to an agreement. Jen and I talked about the possibility of Johnny spending some time at the farm. She mentioned that Kim might have to come along with him for now. Or perhaps Eileen and John could come too. I learned that Kim had also consulted a lawyer about Johnny and custody matters. She was open to me seeing him. During our conversation, Jen was playing with Johnny on the floor. When he knocked over the tower she had built, she quickly caught it before it fell. Kim and I watched in amazement. Johnny didn't seem to care much. He knocked it over again, and this time it crashed down. We decided that Eileen and Johnny would come to the farm with us for a week. After that, we'd see what happened next. Kim would take care of Jamal, who didn't want to see Johnny at that moment anyway. Johnny stayed at the farm for 2 weeks. He became a favorite around the place. Eileen and Johnny had their own room in the main building and ate with everyone else. Eileen noticed the nice men around her and flirted a bit, but that was all. Johnny was walking and even running around. Jen and I kept him entertained after dinner, and Manny enjoyed spending time with him as well. But it was still a business. Manny, Jen, and I had responsibilities to handle. Manny decided to hire another instructor and had someone in mind, Chin Yang. He was as American as any of us. He had grown up in Pennsylvania, had experience in the Army, and had trained fighters. He was 34, but looked much younger. He came from Pittsburgh for an interview, and we all liked him. He accepted the job right away, needing 2 weeks to finish up his previous work. As he was leaving, he turned to me and asked, "Did you have a boxing match recently? It looked like you." "Yes, that was me. It's a long story. I'd like to hear it someday." He smiled and left. Chin's nickname was surprisingly Rob, and I was curious about how he got that name. Just then, Eileen showed up. She said hello, and Rob smiled at her. She smiled back in a friendly way. I started to wonder about her. It seemed like she might be a little like Kim. Jen and I took Eileen and Johnny back to Virginia. When we got there, Kim was present, and she shared a big hug with Johnny. It was nice to see, and under different circumstances, I might have felt happy for them. But given our past, I wasn't feeling that way. Still, I was curious about what she might say if we talked, and we did talk. After Johnny settled down, we learned that John had prepared dinner. It was scheduled for 6, so we could head to Mountain City afterward. This left us with a couple of hours to catch up. Jen pulled me aside and said, "You should talk to her. You know this needs to happen. Maybe if she's open to it. I think she needs to talk just as much as you do. Why don't you take her outside to the backyard?" So, that's what I did. I walked over to where Kim and Eileen were playing with Johnny. "Hey, Kim, can we go outside and talk?" She looked nervous, but agreed. "Okay." We made our way to the back patio. "I thought we should chat," I said. "About Johnny, but mainly I want to understand what happened." "Me too," she said, her eyes starting to fill with tears. I started to develop feelings for Jamal. He was handsome, and maybe I've always been attracted to guys like him, so when he expressed interest in me, I was tempted. It was exciting. I'm sorry. Did you really just fall for him that easily? Yes. It's not your fault. We had a good thing, but I've always felt restless. So, we were meant to break up? That's disappointing, Kim. Still, I can see where you're coming from. It's like you're saying you've always been drawn to other guys. She smiled a little at that. What I can't understand is why you wanted to hurt me at the house. I thought about that a lot. I felt guilty for getting close to Jamal behind your back. I felt bad all the time, but still I couldn't stop seeing him. It felt thrilling, but that just added to my guilt. I think I started to blame you for my feelings. You were so good to me, and that made my guilt worse. So it wasn't a total break from reality? I asked. Not like before. I hope I've moved past that. It felt like I was trying to make sense of my odd choices. If it wasn't for that, I would have had to face my own mistakes, but it was definitely confusing. I can see that, I said, feeling determined. You can succeed in boxing. Maybe you should thank me for that. I think Jamal might be out of the picture. What about Johnny? We should avoid fighting over him if we can. We can try to split our time with him. How flexible can you be at your new place? Not very much, but we did hire someone new. I'm also considering purchasing some land near the farm, possibly an old ski resort. If that works out, I could offer you a spot. But I'm not sure what's going on with you and Jamal. I'm not ready to leave him behind. He was complaining a lot, and it was really getting on my nerves. Can you tell me why he agreed to fight? When you two were at the door later, he seemed to be the one who pulled you away. Well, Brian, Jamal has a lot of anger inside him. It's the same kind of anger I saw in you when you were hitting him. You must have noticed it in his boxing matches. No way. He was only fighting guys he could easily beat. He didn't show any anger then. He's not mad at me, at least not directly. He's angry at people like you. He grew up downtown where some tough kids picked on him since he was 9. Oh, I see. Wrong place, wrong time. I told him to fight you. I didn't know he would take it so far. Later, I asked him about it, and that's what he said. After our talk, I felt like I understood things better. She had some flaws I didn't see at first. It was hard to see her as anything other than someone who made poor choices. But she was complex and seemed to struggle with her feelings. It was surprising we had a meal. John was a good cook and usually did most of the cooking. I started to wonder more about John and Eileen. Where was she while he was cooking? Later on the drive home, I mentioned Kim to Jen. It turned out she had gone upstairs and listened to us through an open window. She said, "That's about as close to the truth as you'll get." Yes, so how should we handle Johnny? Also, Jen, will you marry me? I love you so much. I was going to wait, but after that talk, I feel free in a way. Brian, she said, crying. Yes, you would ask me while driving. I'm going to make you pay for that. She laughed through her tears. We got married a month later on a Saturday. It was a small ceremony at a farm. I couldn't find my mom to invite her. Manny had a sister who came with her husband and 2 almost grown kids. John, Eileen, and Johnny were there. Kim decided not to come, even though Jen wanted her there. Jen and I had a short honeymoon at a beach in Delaware, then it was back to work. I signed up to fight an upcoming light heavyweight contender. I would earn $200,000 because I was still a bit of an unknown, like Rocky in the early days. The fight was scheduled for a month later. No matter who won, the money would help me make a big purchase I wanted. I talked to Jen, Manny, and Jenks about my decision and the training I would need. We set up a routine and I stuck to it. Jenks thought I should avoid distractions, but Jen disagreed. I trained hard and traveled to Philadelphia for the fight. My opponent was Rick Sutter. He was nearly my size, with a shaved head and an energetic style. Jenks and I watched video replays of his fights. He had fought 34 times and lost just once. This isn't just a boxing story, so I'll just say the fight lasted all 12 rounds and I managed to wear him down. I didn't come out of it without feeling sore, though. My body was aching for 2 weeks from all the grappling. I knocked him down once in the 10th round with a strong punch. I thought he was finished, but he got back up just in time. The bell rang and gave him a moment to recover. He was a tough opponent, and I respected him, even if he liked to show off. After the match, I quickly talked to the press, saying I wasn't sure if I would fight again. Then I went back to the farm. I reached out to a real estate agent about an old ski resort. It was 52 acres with a lodge and cabins. It had been used as a summer camp before, so the buildings were in decent shape. With the $150,000 I got from the fight after taxes, I was able to buy it outright using some of my savings too. I also made a deal to sell my business. It was doing really well, and I sold it to my employees in a way that gave me some money up front and a regular payment later. Now I was a landowner. For Manny, Rob Chin was doing incredibly well at the business. He filled in for me while I was focused on boxing. Rob had a close friend named Billy Williams from their time in the military. Manny decided to hire Billy too. The business was thriving. Many people came and went, and everyone paid. I often marveled at how Manny made it all work, but I never asked too many questions. What really made it successful was Manny's talent for teaching. There were plenty of people like Rob and Billy, but only one Manny. After the excitement about my boxing career calmed down, I found peace at the farm with Jen. But then, out of the blue, Kim broke up with Jamal. She moved back in with her parents and seemed okay with it for a while. Not long after, though, she showed up at the farm with little Johnny after New Year's Day. We set them up in a small room upstairs. Then the three of us, Manny, Jen, and I, talked about what to do next. I took Kim aside for a private conversation. I asked her, "What happened with Jamal?" He thought I brought him bad luck. You know he was never meant to be a long-term thing. He was too handsome and young. I see. So, what's next for you? I thought that Johnny needs his dad in his life. And while I love my parents, I don't want to stay with them. I was hoping there might be a job for me here and a place to stay. I'll think it over, Kim. That situation isn't easy for me to forget. Okay. I'm not a fighter, but I can organize things well and I think quickly. I can only apologize so much, but I am truly sorry. In the end, you left me for someone who looked good. More than just looks, she laughed. Not so good looking now, though, I remarked, and we both laughed. I asked, "How is he now?" "He's mostly back to normal after rehab. He's starting to train again and wants to fight the guy you just fought." "All right. Well, I'm not too interested. He threw punches and then faced the consequences. It's even... Except for you. I'm serious about finding a place here. I want to earn my keep if I stay." I talked with Manny and Jen about Kim. Jen was okay with Kim staying. Manny looked at me and asked, "What about you, Brian? Can you handle seeing her around?" "Yes, I can. Jen helped me see things clearer, and I'm better for it." "What can she do for work?" "She's smart. She's in good shape but doesn't know much about what we do. She studied business and accounting in school." Manny said, "What are your plans for the ski camp?" "I want to fix it up and turn it into a vacation spot for people who love nature and fitness. We'll have trails, swimming, rafting, archery, and more. And you need someone to help organize the renovations and sort out costs. Could she help with that?" Jen added. "She could have one of the cabins. That's what we decided." I took another challenge to earn some more money. It was with the top contender in New York, Rodrigo Sanchez. I knew I had to work hard to keep up with him. Jenks and sometimes Manny helped me prepare. We watched videos of all his fights. He was very strong. The fight went all 12 rounds. I managed to knock him down in the 9th round, but he got up angry and returned the favor at the end of that round. I was really frustrated. I had my calming routine in my corner. I focused, but I wanted to really take it to him. This proved to be much tougher than I expected. He was still furious. Despite my training, I ended up going back and forth with him in the last 2 rounds. No one went down, but there were a lot of hits. I pushed him into a corner and focused on his body, while he just kept trying to hit my head. He landed some good punches, but I kept pushing back. I must have landed 30 body shots in each round. I had some anger, that was clear. Later I realized the crowd was cheering loudly, but during the fight, it was just me and him. I finished the 12th round by working him in the corner. I didn't hear the bell. The referee had to pull me away. I looked at Sanchez, surprised he could still stand. He looked back at me. We both nodded. The fight was scored a draw. Later, I thought that was fair. At the time, I didn't care. I believed that if it had gone to 15 rounds, I could have won or maybe faced serious trouble. There was no way we were driving home after that fight. We got rooms at a nearby hotel. I had to see a doctor before I could leave the arena. Sanchez went to the hospital but didn't stay long. He had a cracked rib. I slept fitfully that night before dozing in the van all the way back to the farm. Then I rested for another 18 hours. When I woke up, it was morning. I felt sore, but I could still move around. There wasn't a press meeting after the fight because neither of us were up for it. Jenks set one up in his side room for later that day. Before going down there, Manny, Jen, Jenks, and I watched the whole fight. By the end, we all agreed that it was a draw. If I hadn't gotten knocked down at the end of the 9th round, I would have won the match. I won the last 3 rounds. The judges marked the 9th as even. Before the press meeting, Jen and I talked about whether I wanted to keep fighting. She thought Sanchez was the toughest opponent I would ever face, and didn't think much of the champion. She said he was just a strong hitter and believed Sanchez would beat him. Then I could make a lot of money for another match against Sanchez. I said, "You know, Jen, that fight was really exciting for me. During the last part, nothing else mattered, just the fight. I could get hooked on that. But it could cause me issues in the long run. You handled this one well, but I'm still worried. If you fight again, it has to be your last. We've made enough money already," she replied, hot. As the press conference started, I praised Sanchez and wished him luck for his fight with the champion. I meant every word. I felt a connection with him during the match. There were many questions about the fight, which people were calling a classic. My responses about the first 8 rounds were analytical. But for rounds 9 through 12, I just said, "Those rounds were so much fun." Well, rewarding, really. It's hard to explain, but it was unforgettable. Unless I get hit too many times, that is. Everyone laughed at that, but Jen didn't find it funny. Afterward, the guys at the gym gave me a warm round of applause. I thanked them, and we held a small party to celebrate. Life went back to normal at the farm. I had talked to Kim about helping her organize the new project. She was excited, but also nervous. She asked, "How can you trust me with this after what happened?" "Because we're not married. You can move on if you want, but this is business. I trust you to do a good job," I replied. "Okay, I just want to make sure I don't disappoint you," she said with a few tears in her eyes. I believed she meant it. We named the new business Mountain Adventures. Kim interviewed candidates for a construction manager, and we hired Harvey Bristol, or Harv. He was 40 and had experience in building restoration and landscaping. We thought he would be a great fit. The only thing that worried me was that he had gone through a difficult divorce the year before and shared custody of 2 teenage boys. I wondered if he might be preoccupied with that. I talked to Kim about everything before we made him an offer. I was a bit concerned about his family situation. He might still be involved in it. "I think I can help him feel better, Brian." He was a strong, good-looking guy with dark hair and a solid build. I smiled at Kim. "You mean you're going to charm him?" "I don't think it'll take much charming. I like him. I want to be with him, so I'm going to try. I hope you don't mind, Brian. It won't interfere with work. Just make sure it doesn't. And Kim, you cannot take advantage of him. That would be bad for business. Can I trust you?" "Yes." Kim didn't wait long. Harv was very interested in her and didn't stand a chance. He went into the back room of the cabin where she was working on the project. I noticed that Harv seemed much happier after spending time with Kim, and Kim looked happy too. I figured they worked well together on personal matters just as they did on the project. Harv's 2 teenage sons were helping out for the summer, doing general construction work. They were 15 and 16, but they had worked with him before and were good at it. They mostly stayed with their mother in town. I heard them joking with Harv about Kim, but he quickly shut that down. Everything was going smoothly on all sides. But of course, life has its surprises. Jen and I decided she would stop taking birth control, and she got pregnant quickly. Then Kim also announced her pregnancy. She and Harv seemed happy. I wasn't sure if they planned it, but I had a feeling Kim did. Harv's ex-wife, Alice, didn't seem to be as pleased, but that was her problem, right? Meanwhile, Eileen and John came to visit Johnny and Kim. We all had a nice dinner in the lodge at Mountain Adventures. Little Johnny was fully part of our lives now. Eileen and John stayed in the main building at the farm for 2 weeks. On the second night, I got up late at night and heard some noises coming from Manny's room. The next morning, I asked Jen about it, but she didn't know much. To me, there was only one woman in the building besides Jen. Eileen. Later, I asked Kim about it. "Oh, sure. Mom and Manny connected at dinner. I thought something might happen." Now you see where I get my personality from. Wow, Kim. What about your dad? He's okay with it, Brian. Mom has her needs and he isn't always up for it. Sometimes he likes to watch. At least that's what she says. Seriously? Exactly. She laughed. From what I noticed during John and Eileen's visit, it seemed like they rarely slept in their own room. Manny appeared a bit happier when Eileen was around. After that first visit, John and Eileen became regular guests at the farm. It was hard to keep things discreet during their second visit. Came to the farm, I mean. Everything was going well. The project and the pregnancies were in a good place. Then Sanchez won the championship, and Jen reminded me she had seen that coming. I had taken part in one fight in Pittsburgh to stay sharp. I carried my opponent through 4 rounds before finishing him in the 5th. Our team met at Mountain Adventure to discuss whether I should take a fight with Sanchez for the title. Our group included Jen, Manny, Jenks, Kim, Harv, and me. Kim and Harv were confident the funds would be enough to support the project. So, if I chose to fight, it wouldn't really be about the money. Although that was a plus. Manny was neutral. Jenks was excited about the idea. He told me I could be the champion. To him, it was something he had always dreamed of but never achieved. He believed I could get there. After everyone shared their thoughts, Jen looked at me. I know you're going to do it, Brian. I have my concerns, but you are who you are. This has to be the last one, win or lose. I agree. I saw Manny smiling slightly while Jenks cheered with excitement. The fight was scheduled for March in Vegas. I was going to earn a good amount of money. Meanwhile, the pregnancies had gone well and the project was on track. Jen gave birth to our beautiful daughter, Melissa. Kim had another son, Jack. She made sure of that with Harvey. Kim and Harv got married right before she had the baby. It was a small ceremony at Mountain Adventure. I spent 5 weeks training for my final boxing match. Jenks and Manny watched videos of both Sanchez's fights, and our last one to see how he might change his approach. Jenks said, "You had him in the later rounds, Brian. This fight is set for 15 rounds. He'll want to finish it early." Manny added, "Not too early, though. Jenks, what do you think?" "Probably around 9 or 10. He'll likely try to start a real fight by then, maybe even 8. They were spot on. The bout began as a test of skills. I hit Sanchez with jabs while he landed a few solid punches on me. I noticed when he punched with his right, he didn't always start with a jab. It was just a straight shot. Different from our last encounter. In my corner after the 7th round, Manny pointed out, "He drops his left when he throws that right. You can hook him there." The 8th round started off steady. I was using my jabs and right cross when Sanchez shot his right punch. I managed to knock him down with a hook. He got right back up, determined. He rushed at me, and I pushed him onto the ropes like before. I hit him in the body, and he caught me with a solid uppercut. Then we broke apart and met in the center again. He launched another right punch, and I hit him with another hook. I was surprised he stayed standing to finish the round. I asked Jenks in the corner, "What should I do now? He's going to go all out now. He's behind since the fall. He'll get tired if you hold on." The guess about the fight ending quickly was spot on. The guess about him tiring out wasn't quite right. Sanchez was full of energy in the 9th round. He threw punches from all sides. I took some solid hits, especially one to the head at the end. I was exhausted when I reached my corner. Jenks just told me to keep pushing. I understood what he meant. I had won my last fight by keeping the pressure on with body shots. I wasn't sure if I could do that again. The next 5 rounds turned into a rough match. It was almost non-stop, with hardly any breaks. I managed to corner him, landing many punches to his sides. He landed a couple of good shots that made me a bit dizzy. I held on to him after each hit. Before the 15th round, I sat on my stool, feeling worn out. I glanced over at Jen. She raised her hand, showing her fist. She silently said, "Stay off the ropes." I stood up and met him in the middle of the ring. We tapped gloves, then went at it with all we had. After about 2 minutes, I pushed him to the ropes again and hit him hard. He absorbed a few hits, and I noticed him starting to weaken. I stepped back and landed a strong punch to his jaw. It was one of my hardest, and he fell sideways to the mat. I staggered back to my corner thinking the fight was done, but he got back up. The referee talked to him and he responded. We both stood there for a moment after the referee stepped back. Then he motioned for me to come in. I jabbed him in the face and he pushed me back. He swung a punch near my head just as the bell rang. We leaned into each other, both worn out. I said, "You're an amazing fighter. You too. I don't want to fight you again." The judges all chose me as the winner. I was the champion. There wasn't a press conference afterward. We both went to the hospital for some care. I left the next day, looking like I had been through a storm. Back at the hotel, Jen and I relaxed for a while. I went downstairs for a press event, and Jen joined me. I announced my retirement. I said I had accomplished what I wanted and had no desire to fight Sanchez again. I told them I believed he would win the title back someday. He's the strongest out there. When he got up at the end, I was shocked. If he'd hit me with that last punch, it might have been different. That's enough for me. I didn't take any questions. The next day, we flew back home. 5 years later, Jen and I welcomed our son, Terrence. Melissa and Johnny are doing well and attend the local public school. Johnny has been training with Manny for some time, and no one bothers him. Kim and Harv also have another child, Joan. She's adorable. So far, Kim hasn't found anyone to challenge Harv, but we're all a bit on edge about it. There are plenty of guys here who might step up. I think becoming a mother has calmed her down. John and Eileen sold their place in Virginia and moved up here. They now have a small house just outside the mountain adventure area. They still visit Manny, mostly at night. Sometimes both of them go, and sometimes just Eileen, never just John. They all seem content with whatever they've got going on. I don't ask and they don't share. Both the farm and mountain adventure are doing well. New workers come and go, but Rob and Billy are still there, teaching alongside Manny, Jen, and sometimes me. Neither of them has any relationships. It's a bit surprising, really. Sanchez won the tournament for the vacant title. As for Jamal Bennett, he was never the same after that knockout. He retired last year and now works for the public schools in D.C. I've heard he's married with kids. He wasn't a bad guy. He just made the mistake of getting involved with a married woman. Kim, of all people. The funny thing is, if Jamal hadn't gotten involved with Kim, I never would have become champion. I can't hate him anymore. Holding on to hate is just unhealthy. And me? I still enjoy chopping wood. I'll never step back into the boxing ring again, but I sometimes watch MMA and UFC fighters. It's fun to watch. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to Infidelity Plus to stay updated with more captivating tales of infidelity and payback. Turn on notifications so you're the first to see our latest content.